Hey, welcome back. Listening to client requests is a deceivingly complex issue with a lot of subtle nuances that often get lost in a wash of communication. When a client has a request, there are a few things to consider. Is your client asking you to do something or telling you? If they're using phrases like can we or if we could, it's more of an ask than a tell. This means there's room sometimes for pushback to explain to them why we can't. If they're directly telling you, will you or could you, most certainly you're likely being told. That doesn't mean that you can't respond with a yes but or certainly however and give them some friendly alternatives. At the end of the day, the client's relying on your expertise to help steer the project ship. Don't be afraid to ride into the swells of the ocean with them. This brings me to the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is a cognitive bias that makes informed team members have a difficult time to think about the problems from the perspective of lesser informed members of the group. For instance, if you're a specialist in mechanical engineering, you'll have a much easier time understanding your gear ratios than the client who's much more versed in, say, account management. Therefore, when you explain things to the client or the team members, you need to understand why a certain gear needs to be used. Part of your job becomes either creating a verbal or visual metaphor that they can grasp onto to make it easier for them to comprehend. Back in college, I had a professor that had an observation about working for free and being paid to work. If you work for free, your clients are going to demand much more from you than if they're paying you a retainer or a fee. Part of this is the psychological dynamic that comes with spending money. If I'm spending a ton of money, I all of a sudden feel like I can trust the person because if they're getting some sort of exorbitant fee out of their services, certainly they know what they're doing, right? This is of course not always the case, but I've noticed the less I charge, the more demanding the client is. Fees can be a powerful tool for leveraging clout within a project. Let's also talk about the scope of a project. This is essentially your agreed upon duty. It could be design, it could be engineering, it could be brand research. As long as the initial ask is aligned with the agreed upon set of responsibilities, you can move forward with the request with ease. If there is scope creep, the uncontrolled growth of responsibilities you're dealing with, it might be time to reassess the working agreement to more clearly define your role and extend the project budget. I'll talk more about scope creep in a different video on how to manage it a bit. The reason it's important to consider all of these components when listening to the client is that it'll set you up for a better and longer relationship with the customer over the project and into future work. Let's look at an example. CCD did work for a local bike rack manufacturing company. The relationship was established as a consulting role and fit 3 different tasks. Those were identify 3 roles in the company that needed to be filled with a team member, such as a social media manager, an accountant, and so on. Number 2, create a best used social media engagement book with a sample product campaign. And 3, create 2 new products for the catalog that would amplify the brand. After a month, I had made the recommendations for the roles that should be filled within the company, and I had created the engagement book that would help take the company to the next level. The third point was what we spent the second month working on. Halfway through, the client and I sat down and had a talk. He was concerned about vendor costs and wanted to redefine the scope based on a separate vendor's bids. Client eccentricity is normal, so we're sympathetic to the sticker shock. When we sat down, the true desire of the client came out. He wanted to, quote, be in a better position than the company currently was. This was a much different expectation than was initially voiced. Originally, it had been established that the goal was to take down the top company. This meant that our engagement with the company needed a complete overhaul. Thankfully, we were downshifting versus upshifting our sights. This meant we could relax the strategy slightly to focus on broadening the product line, to focus on matching what worked before for him as a supplier. Ultimately, clearly defining what it is your client wants will make your target clearly painted. Set some boundaries too. Don't be afraid to set limits when your client is allowed to reach out and at what phases. Be flexible but firm. The more integrity you have for yourself, the more integrity your client will see. Send me some of your thoughts. I'd love to know how you listen to your client requests. Are they your buddy? Do they question your pricing? Do they listen to your recommendations? Let me know. Thanks so much and have a great day.